Welcome to the How to PMP seminar series, Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal, Proactive Monitoring, Signals. So today we're going to understand the room's dashboard. We're going to look at what signals are available, signal categories and severities. We'll look at the 4 states of an alert. We'll go into the incident dashboard itself, how to suppress alerts, get a lot of questions on that. And then we'll get into the signals. And we're going to go through a few signals. And if we've got time, we're going to end up polling everyone to see what other signals that we want to get into. And we'll try to do as much as we can during this call, and if not, we'll move it into another series. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. All right, so for everybody who is joining us today, we are talking about the Teams Rooms Pro Management Portal itself. It is a comprehensive device management portal. It is built off of an AI platform. Even before we were talking about Copilot, it does deliver proactive insights and management and planning. And of course, we have a number of wonderful partners around the world that can help our customers and you with your rooms. So all of that works together. So let's get into the basic signal architecture. So when we take a look at the picture and stuff over here of a Teams room device, a Teams room in general, right? We have the MTR that typically sits right on the tabletop. So you might have microphone pucks. They might be in the ceiling. We'll have, either the collab bar in the front with the microphone camera and speaker all in one. There might be content cameras, there might be dual cameras. We have the front of room displays, maybe even dual front of room displays. All of these things send telemetry back and they're connected to the MTR. And so in that, again, from an architecture standpoint, the MTR is the basis of pulling in that connectivity, and it does talk to the agent that's on the device. So whether the MTR is on Windows or it's actually on Android, there is both an agent that sits on either one of those types of devices, and it sends information to that agent. That agent sends it to our Pro Management services in the cloud, of which is where the Pro Management portal is hosted. So this is when we start talking about how different signals bring in that information and what we're actually keying off of. It's good to know like how the information and stuff flows either from the operating system to the MTR, to the agent, to the services, to the portal. All right, so hopefully everybody got that. All right, so we start really kind of with the room's dashboard. And in the Pro Management portal, and if most all of you will have visibility. In the previous webinar, we talked about, what do you see on this room's dashboard? And it really does come down to your role and what rooms you've been assigned. So you may not see everything that is deployed in your estate. You might have a subset of that, and that was based on your permission. But overall, right, you can come to this dashboard and add a view. You would be able to see exactly what's going on really in your estate. So how many rooms are managed or devices that are managed. And then you can get into what does healthy mean. So healthy really is just the number of, there are no reported alerts, right, for this number of rooms, right? In that case, everything would be healthy. If you have number under unhealthy, there is rooms that do have some sort of an alerting issue. Now, they may not be all that the room is not working or you have to go do something with it, but it does give you an alert of, okay, we've got some issues and stuff going on with this number of rooms. The unmonitored state, we're going to spend some time on unmonitored because this one typically ends up being the most frequently asked question.
What does unmonitored mean?
What does it mean?
I get asked that all the time.
We do get asked it. All right, so it means the number of rooms that are not connected to the PMP services. Okay, so if we go back to what I just showed you in the basic architecture, something is not moving from your world in the MTR to the Pro Management portal. What that is unknown, right? What we're just telling you is we are not getting signals from your device, and we're going to need some help, because if we can't detect the signals because the connection for whatever reason isn't working, then we're not actually monitoring that device. Okay, the device could be working just fine in the room. It's that connectivity back to us that is not working. All right, so I want to be clear on that. And then we have this concept of suppressed, and we're going to dive into suppressing, what to suppress and how suppressed works. But it would be the X number of rooms that have actually had alerts that have been silenced. Okay, so that's what that one means. And if you happen to still see the sleeping on the dashboard, this was a relic of Surface Hubs Gen 1 or Gen 2s that were connected to the Pro Management portal. The old Surface Hubs now, all of you should be migrated up to MTRs on your Surface Hubs. In the past, they did go into a sleep mode when they were unused. There were power saving settings. And when it went into that sleep mode, we could identify that they were sleeping. So now that they're MTRs, they don't go to sleep, so it's not really a valid one anymore, and we'll end up getting rid of it. And then the last one is unlicensed. All right, so now the Teams Rooms Pro Management portal, back in May, we have migrated all Teams Rooms on Windows out of Teams Admin Center into the Pro Management portal. And based on whether you still have legacy, either basic licenses or legacy standard licenses, you still would see your devices in the Pro Management portal, but you'll have a very different experience. And if they happen to be unlicensed at all, right, that you're, for whatever reason, you're bringing on resource accounts or you're getting rid of some, it would show you the license state of it. And if it's unlicensed, then obviously it's not reporting, and we aren't able to give you information and stuff on it. So that is the room dashboard. Okay, what I want to bring up really kind of about this room dashboard is, as a best practice, I see that people go to this and they're like, oh, I have so many unmonitored rooms. This is a very fluid state, because at any point, right, as we're monitoring that device, things can go unhealthy, things can become healthy, things can go unmonitored. There could be transient issues in the network and then come back again. They might be in their nightly maintenance window. So everything is really quite fluid here. And so to manage based on this rooms dashboard is not where that would be the best practice. So I'm going to get into the incident dashboard in just a second. But keep in mind, this is fluid. And I also do get a lot of questions on the export all. So the export all here does give you the information about the devices in your fleet, operating system, what is the settings on those devices. Android settings will be added to that coming up fairly soon. But you get to see kind of what the software versions and things that are available on your devices in that export all. What we don't do is in that export give you any of these attributes here if the room is unhealthy or healthy on purpose, because when you're doing that export, within any given second after the export, things could change right here. And so we don't want to export out information that could be that fluid, so that it looks like that the report isn't reporting correctly. So I just want to kind of address that, because I get a lot of questions on that export all of like, why doesn't it include these values and stuff here? And it's because those values change. All right, so we got that. So then in that room's dashboard, you can click on any of the devices or rooms that happen to be there. And when you do, it does bring out this window pane of where you can see the status. And you obviously have other tabs and stuff that you can do at. We're not going to focus on the other tabs today. We're just going to take a look at what these signals are. And currently, all of the signals are really identified into these categories. And so for us, the most important one, account management, is because you have to sign into the device itself. The device needs to sign in, and it needs to fetch the calendar for it to work correctly. So we have a category, and there used to be, when we had sign in for Exchange, that obviously changed. So there's a couple of signals that fall under that account management. And then we have operating system, firmware, and apps, where we do have a number of signals now underneath that kind of fall up into that category. Configuration and settings, that's a different type of a category. Hardware and peripherals, so for HDMI, your microphones, speakers, your cameras, that all kind of fall in that area. Then we have the displays. There's actually now some display signals that there are multiple ones there too. For security, there is a few security signals that we do have. There is also some customers have a version that many years ago we offered a security, much more signals under the security element. It's not available for most pro management customers, so there's actually kind of a number of security signals under there, but the most ones that you would tend to see is if you had the default credentials, which we can talk about default credentials later. There's connectivity for all of that, the monitored states as part of that. And outage, if we do see something that is affecting like all tenants, we might end up creating, those are actually custom made tickets that we would make on the engineering side to your environment. So you probably will never see an outage ticket unless there was something that we did, at behind the scenes here in our engineering team. So tend not happen there. All right, let's go ahead. And then there's an other we haven't, I don't think there's anything under other either. Okay, so some of the signals that we have are Teams rooms on Windows. And if you notice, I think there's 54 different signals that we have for Windows. If they're all enabled in your environment, obviously these are things that we can get from the device in general. And if there are issues with that, obviously you're going to get an alert associated with those things. If you notice that Teams rooms on Android have a lot less signals, they do have a lot less signals. There will be more that will come out as part of that. Some of that in the Windows world is operating system related. In the Teams rooms on Android, as Teams rooms, we don't own the operating system. That's actually owned by the OEM. And so we don't have elevated privileges to get much of that information. We work through a partner agent on those devices that work on our behalf that the OEM has to get some of those signals. So that's a work in progress. But right now there are, I believe, 7 signals. There will be more coming as well with those. But I just wanted you to see that there is a difference with what you get on Windows. And then the touch consoles themselves can give us alerts specific to their device and their form factor. So there's each of our alerts really kind of come down to 4 different severities. And so we get a lot of questions on this one too, of like, what can I change these? Okay, so I have identified signals as either being critical or important. They're either a warning or a recommendation. And they really indicate and how we classify them because it is in our determination of what signal falls into which of these categories is really based on the impact of the room. So that's what we're looking at in terms of why we classify a signal is that. And it's like, well, even though you think it's critical, we might not, want it. Maybe it's a warning to us. Well, we think that critical is that critical aspect of the room. So the important and critical, when those signals happen, that's what turns the room unhealthy. And I think I didn't point that really out on the room's dashboard. Where we have healthy, it's green, and where it's unhealthy, it's red. What triggers that? And that's between the critical and important. So if a signal falls under that, which what I just showed you of the signals that are available for Android or Windows, they do have what their severity is and what we've determined what that happens to be. But only critical and important will turn the room unhealthy. Warnings and recommendations are just that. If you don't deal with a warning, eventually it will turn into a problem for you. So that's just something from a planning standpoint, you might want to address those warnings. And recommendations are just that, right? Those are best practices that we see that if you did them, your rooms will behave better, in the future. And like I said, severity at the can't be modified. So if you're wanting to do that, we determine what that is. Okay, so we're going to get into the signal states. So this is kind of the basis of, and we're going to get into it. And I'm going to take you through like how all of this stuff works. Why signals can be chattier than most, right? Or trigger again, or when you see the same issue represent itself, and it's based on these states. So when we get into a signal, activates based really on the properties that are reported by the agent. right? And they will remain active as long as they are not healthy. So we are getting a constant polling from the device itself. And if we don't see that change, then we're not going to change the ticket, because a lot of times there's questions of how come I can't close the ticket? It's because the whole system is set up to recognize through these automations when we see the signal actually come back and be healthy again. So, and depending on that signal, you might when we talk to activation, right? And I'm going to take you through kind of again the watching, active, and resolved. Why you don't immediately get alerted to some things, and I'll explain that in just a second. So there are two factors that introduce delays. So even though that we're polling and we might see exactly when something alerts for the very first time, we don't want you necessarily running to rooms to go fix things if we're going to fix them and run a remediation as part of that. So we've created what we call a watching state. So the watching state is that first state where we identify that something has now reported back that it's not working, but there's also some other flows that we might end up going through before we determine, yep, it's really a problem. You need to be alerted to it, and you need to act on it. So we have put in the state to kind of see if it's going to solve itself, and sometimes they can. So after activation, some signals support some automatic diagnostics or remediation workflows. Not all signals have the ability to have a remediation be applied to it. So, whatever we can and whatever signal we can, we will try to apply, a software, a solution to it to be able to bring that signal back so you don't have to. And that's also again, that watching state to active that is what all happens kind of in that step. So let me take you through that, and then obviously resolved and closed. So this is what the flow looks like.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, what did I got? Okay.
In the Q&A. So if I suppress a signal,
yep.
Does this remediation flow that you're talking through still run in the background if I've suppressed that signal, or does nothing happen once I've suppressed that signal?
Nope. Once you've suppressed the signal, then we ignore it, right? So it does silence it from going through any sort of flow.
Okay,
yeah. So let me run you through it.
Do the remediation then. Perfect.
Nope, we wouldn't. Nope. So, So, and I'll address. Yeah, that's a great question. So let's go through this, and hopefully this will make it a little bit clearer. Okay, so we'll start here kind of on the left-hand side of the signals report is unhealthy. So whatever that is, going through the MTR, the agent, we see something, right? So that's when we trigger this watching state. So when the watching state happens, actually behind the scenes, there is an incident ID that is generated. Now, keep in mind, right, the Pro Management Portal is not a typical ITSM tool like ServiceNow. The alert identifier, if we want to call it that, is what we have triggered there. Okay, so the first thing it goes through as a flow is there a remediation available? So as we're watching it, the first thing we ask is yes. Okay, so if there is a remediation that we can apply to it, there might still be some other steps that it goes through to determine, all right, if it's signing in, the MTR app actually will have 3 tries automatically that it does. We wait for those 3 tries to happen, and then we can try something else. So there is still workflows depending on each of the individual signals. So that will happen first, and then if it's a remediation, then we'll go, okay, yes, and then we'll trigger the remediation and it'll run. When that happens, and we're in that state, and we're going to see it in just a second, there is a state called system investigating. And so we will assign that into the system investigating. We'll look at that in just a second. But if their remediation isn't available, right, and it's not, then it automatically gets assigned to an active state. And so we actually change the state from watching internally to an active state. And then it moves that ticket over to needing action in the incident pane. So when it says needs action, it needs your action. It means there's nothing more that we can do. At this point, we've determined it needs human hands, and you need to investigate what that is. All right. So if we go down the path of we ran the remediation and that worked, right, and the signal is healthy, then it goes to a resolved state. But if the signal is not healthy after the remediation, then we'll move that again to the active state, right, where you need action. So we leave it in the resolve state. So again, you might go now, you act on that action. It needs action. You go to the room, you do whatever you need to do to bring that signal back. And once the sort of system sees that the signal is healthy, then it changes it to this resolve state. And it stays in this resolve state until we see it report unhealthy again. And we actually keep it in a resolve state for 7 days. And so if it represents itself within that 7 days, then it goes back into this watching state, and it doesn't generate a new incident number. It will reopen the same incident number. Again, we're not an ITSM tool. So like if you had ServiceNow, ServiceNow works in I have a problem, I fix the problem, I close the problem. It's a one and done, right? This is okay, we are still seeing this represent itself. So it'll still go through this flow, and it will continue to open up that same incident number so we can create, actually pattern detection here of this is still an underlying issue that's happening. If for 7 days we don't see it go unhealthy again under that ticket, then we move it to a closed state. So when you're starting to see tickets reopen itself, or if you've hooked up your ServiceNow environment and it's generating a lot of tickets as a part of it, then what it's telling you here is it's representing itself and going back through this flow, and you still have an underlying issue. So we want to kind of address that. So hopefully this makes sense to folks. Matt, any questions in the chat, since I'm watching PowerPoint? I'm not watching the chat.
Jimmy and I have been keeping up with the chat. So
okay, all right.
You can keep rolling.
Keep rolling. All right, so here we go. All right, so now based on that flow of like understanding, okay, how the flow and stuff goes, when you go to the incident pane, so this is the best practice, right? If it's not alerting you under the incident pane, then right now you shouldn't have to act on it. So this is where you're starting to see the system investigating. Those are the number of watching states that we're currently seeing that is going through its triage process on our side, running the remediations, taking a look and seeing what's going on. The needs action are the things that require action on your behalf. Now you will only see the numbers here based on the role that you were assigned or the rooms that you were assigned in that role. And so if you were only assigned, a subset of rooms, your needing action might be a lot lower than the overall view of, everything that's kind of going on across your estate. So again, take a look here. This is what you should look at, like in the morning, like what's our scenario and stuff here, what I need to look at. Now it sorts everything by the categories and stuff of which we went over. And you can see obviously the active ones, but when you get into the resolved, and I didn't do a screenshot of the resolved, those will be the ones that, we remediated or you closed, or again, it's in that 7-day period. So under resolved, you would see those that were just resolved and waiting for that 7-day period, and you will also see the closed tickets there as well. Now, if you open up the little chevron here, it would expand out, and then you would see the underlying tickets that happen to be underneath that. And then each one of those you can click in independently and then start evaluating kind of what that ticket means. All right, so we'll get there. Understand the instance, you can see I just didn't do. All right, well, the incidents, if you click on it, all right, they have suggestions for how to resolve it. And what we found is many customers don't actually go in and look at this. Now, this information does get passed in the email notifications if you have email notifications turned on. They also, this first message does come through if you have ServiceNow integration enabled, and it will tell you, okay, what we did detect as part of it. Almost all, if not all, have a link to what we call troubleshooting guides. And those troubleshooting guides are available on the Microsoft Learn site for Teams Rooms Pro Management. And we go into much more detail there than we can here of what we have detected, why we have detected it, and what are the common things that you can do to bring that back. Okay, so in this particular case, this happens to be a camera. Because we're not detecting the camera, so the camera could be working, right? But it's not connected to the MTR sending the proper signals through the agent. And so that's where we need help in identifying why that connectivity is lost. And so if, again, there's some cameras we can run remediations on and bring them back, and there's others that we can't. And so we need you to take these other further steps and stuff with it. But all of that will be in the suggested resolution, and you certainly have access to the troubleshooting guides. We're going to try to go through some of that today that are in the troubleshooting guides, but to answer your questions. So what we want you to take a look at is always look at the signal first and what we've told you as a recommendation. Now, and this is my plea to you, always check the history tab. Okay, so the history tab here will indicate, right, if this is a recurring issue and getting reactivated, going back in that watching state. And when you start seeing, that this is happening consistently across a period of days or within even the same day, there is an underlying issue. And by us running a remediation, we could be, maybe masking what the real underlying problem might be, because we can identify it and then we can fix it, and then it comes back again. And we'll get into some of the signals that could have a more higher propensity of having this happen because certain settings might not be added that could help alleviate some of it. So my big thing is, please go take a look at the incident, look and see what the problem is, and the Learn article, and then most importantly, take a look at this history tab to see how many times this has been representing itself. So this will be the indicator to you if you're getting a lot of noise that's coming through on a specific room or on a specific piece of equipment in the room. It will be because there is something here, and you'll probably see the evidence of that in the history tab. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so now we're going to do signal suppression. And this is the silencing of the signal. If you want it to bypass all of that, you can suppress them. And so we have 4 different ways of suppressing signals. You can turn it off completely for your entire estate. Okay, so not recommended, but you might want to do that. And you can just under the settings navigation, you do have to be a pro management admin or a Teams admin or a Teams device admin or global administrator, one of those roles. And you would be able to, at a tenant level within the pro management portal, turn off a specific signal. So enabling a signal, they're all enabled by default. Disabling that, you highlight what that signal is that you want to go away, and then you click disable, and it will, it doesn't immediately close all the tickets. What it does do is anything from that moment on, it won't alert on that signal. In the nightly maintenance window, all incidents get evaluated for whether the signal is suppressed or not. And if you have a number of tickets that were opened and you went ahead and silenced the signal, in the nightly maintenance window in that evaluation, it would close actually all of the tickets that fell under the disabled signal, and it would close those tickets. So, in some cases, you if there was a flood of a specific type of ticket that came through that you didn't want to address, maybe it was a warning or a recommendation, that is a way to close those signals, is to disable it here at the tenant level. You can also suppress multiple rooms at a time. Now, if you don't, you could use your groups, and then that could narrow down the number of rooms and stuff that you have, or you have your list of rooms themselves. And if you have the proper permission of room modification, you can highlight next to a number of rooms, and then you can hit the suppress button, and it will suppress all of those rooms at one time. So you can do that in multiples. You can also, from an individual room level, suppress a room. So I don't want to do a bunch of rooms. I just want to do this one. This is the one we're working on. We know we have issues. Or again, if you're doing multiple ones, we know the building's going down or that floor where there's work being done. We want to silence those signals. That would be a reason why to do them in a group. But maybe it's just this room and we know that we're working on it and we're doing something with it. We don't want any signals and stuff that come out of that. You can do it at the room level here. Now you can also do it by the specific individual setting for a very specific room. So in this particular case, I don't think you'd want to disable Windows Update, but if for whatever reason an executive, I don't want the camera, I never want the camera turned on, you know that you've unplugged the camera. Maybe you want to silence that camera signal because we know it's not there. It will always alert that it's not there, and that's a desired configuration for you. So there's no reason to have that. Now, in order to see the underlying signals for each one of those categories, there is a little toggle button over to the right that if you turn that on, will allow the expansion of each of these areas or these categories where you can expand it, and then you would see the underlying signals that have that, and that's where you would find them if you wanted to turn them off individually at the room level. So again, if you had a specific ticket or an incident that was opened for a while, and you come to the room itself, again, it works similar to what I just explained on the tenant level. If I suppressed this specific signal and I had a ticket opened with it, and I turned it on and I suppressed it in the nightly maintenance window, it would notice that, for this particular room, it's now disabled or enabled. It will go ahead and will close the ticket on the incident side. So it would go away. So yes, to answer the question that you had in the chat, when I suppress a room or I suppress a signal for any given things, I am bypassing any sort of remediation that's going on. So if I unsuppress it, what'll end up happening is the device gets reevaluated of all of its signals, because now we're going to query the device itself to see if what the health of it is at that time. If that represents itself, then it's still a problem. It might be that it doesn't represent itself and it's healthy and you've cleared the signal. So that's a way that if you needed to clean up past incidents, you would be able to do that. Right, so that's signal suppression. All right, I think we're doing pretty good on time, Matt. So we're going to get into a few of the signals. I think that we'll be able to address this in the next few minutes, and then we can start polling people of what signals they want us to talk about. So for everybody that's still listening and stuff. If you've got.
We got lots of people still listening. I've been focused on the chat and the Q&A the entire time.
All right, cool. So let's start talking about the unmonitored signal, because this again is probably the one that we have the most questions and stuff on. All right, so
Definitely.
if a device is unmonitored, right, or offline. Now, really, the unmonitored and offline can mean two different things, but in general, it's unknown, right? We're not getting any connectivity to the device itself, and so it can't report anything in. If it's in this unmonitored state, then updates aren't happening on your device. So that's not good either. Remediations can't run on the device. You can't remote in to the device. You can't collect logs, and even restarting it, we won't have any way to do that. So when you have in an unmonitored state, and again, you can say, but the room is working fine, and it can be. We want you to run, we have what we call the agent test tool. And so the agent test tool works for Windows devices, does not work on the Android devices. But I have a whole video on the agent test tool itself and what you do and how to actually download that, get into the device, and be able to run it. What it does do is, if you had watched the first video or you joined us in the first webinar, I talked about the URLs that our service uses that connects the devices right to the cloud and to the Pro Management Portal. The agent test tool runs through diagnostics against all of those URLs and does a validation of is anything blocked there. Now, it could be that your agent test tool, everything comes back fine and you're still not connected to the Pro Management Portal. The agent test tool also collects logs, and so it collects the team's rooms logs themselves from the MTR application. It also collects the agent logs. There's a few other things that it collects as well. And so what we would want you to do in that case, if we're not asking you to go investigate the logs, you shouldn't have to. What we want you to do is open up a Microsoft support case, attach the logs. And again, in the agent test tool, there is a text file that will indicate to you, like, here's the steps. So there's a README file on all of it. And I have it identified in the other YouTube video of what to do with the agent test tool and what you can look at and what you're going to see as results and stuff of that. So again, it'll have logs. We can add that to a support ticket, and then our support organization can take a look at it and help you figure out why it's not monitored. Usually it can be the agent services themselves. The services run, obviously, they start usually on the device as a service. You can stop and start the service. That usually brings it back, and there's connectivity again. If you wanted a root cause of like why the service stopped, it would be probably more than likely in the logs themselves. Could be a network issue. If either you're blocking the URLs or something else is happening on the internet. So it just tends to typically be those two things. But we would want you to do the logs, and we will help you through that. Okay, so unmonitored does not mean it's not working. It means we can't see the device in the Pro Management portal, and we need your help getting it back up. Okay. Front of room displays. Matt, we get a bunch of these as well too. Okay, so
talk about this one all the time.
We do. All right. So how the front of room displays work, or what the signals that come off of that, and how the signal itself works. There is a count of available displays, and that's what gets checked. Okay, but it gets checked against, again, like if you think of your front of room displays, do I have one or do I have two? And that kind of goes back to the setting, why I have the setting here as a call out of you have to indicate if you have two monitors and stuff in the room. So we take a look at this signal, this particular setting, and if there's two, then we're going to have two that we need to look for. But the console, the touch console itself, is also considered a display. So, but it's not really the front of room display, but it adds to the count. So if I had two dual front of room displays, the two, and the console, then I really technically have three, right, that we're looking for. So when one of those disconnects, then we don't necessarily know which one of the three disconnect. Then we get a flag that the front of room display is not working. Now for the touch console, it does slightly give us a different signal. So we have actually created a different incident for the touch console, because we can tell that it's not one of the front of room displays. So, but it is still calculating whether it's a 2 or a 3 and something is missing out of that. So remember, dual front of room 1, front of room 2 because of this, and then the touch console was the 3. If I only have 1, then I've got the touch console, then I've only got 2. So it's doing a calculation based on the number that it sees. Again, this can also trigger, right, depending on the power state. So on your display itself, it does matter commercial versus consumer displays, if you went to Best Buy and got them, or you got the actual commercial displays, because many of them on the commercials have other attributes you can set on the display for your power savings mode, which keeps enough of the power down that you're not burning in the images on the display, but leave enough power on that it still remains connected to the MTR. And that's what matters, right, is that we still see that there's enough of a connection there. And many of them have a way to wake on sync. That's the feature and stuff on it. I think CEC settings, right, Matt? But if you're having issues where the displays are going to sleep and they're generating this, then the best practice, and again, there is a troubleshooting guide for that, is to work with your display manufacturer and the whatever instructions stuff they get, and start working with the power related settings on those displays so that you can keep them still connected enough power to keep them connected to the MTR. So that tends to be a lot. Matt, do you want to add anything to that one that I missed?
No, I think you covered that one pretty well. The one thing that I'll say is that if you put other devices in line with your device, so if there's something in between your Teams Rooms device and your display scaler, EDID minder,
Needed
video
minders, right?
wall processor, whatever it might be, the Teams room can only see the next thing in the signal path. So if you put something in between, we're only going to report on the status of whatever that thing in between is. So just something to keep in mind as you deploy Teams rooms, particularly in the more advanced AV spaces. This may be something that is a little less beneficial for those organizations that put something in between.
Yep, that's great. Thank you for calling that out. All right, low disk space. This one came up. This one because, and why I put this in here is because this one is probably more top of mind than most recently, especially for Teams rooms on Windows that just went through the 24H2 update. So this signal is flagged unhealthy when there's not enough free disk space on the system drives. And the threshold that we put is 18% or less than 15 gigabytes, and then that will come up. Some of again, this usually arises in the time frames when a Windows feature update happens. And now disks can fill up. However, the Teams application itself, or Teams Rooms application, will systematically remove old files. They can stay around for 30 days. Some of the log collection that we do when we report an incident, that does stay on the device for 30, but it will clean itself up. So in every nightly maintenance window, there is a level of devices being cleaned up for old files. But usually it's the bigger Windows feature updates when they write to a .old file, right? Because once Windows tries to update itself, it does copy itself over, so it has a recovery path. That can take up a great deal of space. And if you don't have a lot of extra room on the device because of other things, then you can get into this low disk space incident. Now, the remediation does run to try to remediate a bunch of files. And so you will see in the ticket itself, and that's why I did a little screenshot and stuff of all the different directories here that safely can be removed, or not the directories themselves, the files within those directories can be safely removed to free up space. There are some that we do as part of the remediation, which is in the troubleshooting guide. So if you go to the Learn documentation, we show you the 7 or 8 directories and stuff that where the remediation will remove things. But if you wanted to be more aggressive to removing things off of the device, if you wanted that to go away, you can manually go do that, and you can delete out of these directories and you would be okay. But in general, things do clean themselves up after 30 days, and it will close itself at some point. Okay, so it's really up to you. I think it's a warning or a recommendation. I think it might be a warning whether you want to clean this one up or not. Okay, so that might be relevant to some folks right now. All right, Bluetooth on Android and Windows. This one has popped up. So yeah, Matt, if you I will.
You want me to talk about it, or you want to talk about it?
Well, yeah, you can. You did it just lovely yesterday with, I think we talked about it in open hours, right? So yeah, it really has to do with the operating system setting. But yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead and you can address this one.
So this signal is really focused on letting you as the IT admin know that Bluetooth has been disabled at an operating system level, be it on Windows or on Android. The impact here would be you might have Bluetooth off, but proximity join turned on from a Teams app level. But suddenly, because you have Bluetooth off on the device, proximity join doesn't work because there's no Bluetooth beacon, so you've turned off the Bluetooth piece of it. This is intended to alert you to that, to let you know that Bluetooth has been disabled at an OS level, and then give you information that you should go turn it back on again, either on the Windows side or on the Android side of the house. On the Windows side, it's typically you go into the control panel in Windows and turn it back on again, or fix whatever might be wrong in Device Manager. And on the Android side, it's really focused on going into the OEM level settings and turning Bluetooth back on again based on your OEM's configuration that might exist on that device.
All right, thank you. That was beautifully done. So, yep. All right, default credentials. Yeah, this is a good one. So this alert is triggered when you have not changed the out-of-the-box admin password that everyone is aware of what that might be. So we want you to be able to, um, it doesn't matter what you change it to. We just want it changed, and then you don't have to change it again, because I think, we really have a posture of like, you don't not changing the passwords in general. But obviously, from the admin standpoint, out of the box, we want you to be able to change that. So once you do, this will go away forever. And it's an easy one to resolve, and one that if you don't, just know that you really have created a potential threat plane. So don't do that and make that change. All right. So CD default credentials, jump on that one. All right. Connected using Wi-Fi. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about this one. Because there are different form factors. So when MTR is exclusively connected to the internet, right, via Wi-Fi, we know that call quality can be affected, right? So we really want you to have a wired configuration if possible, right? So while some organizations have a wired as the primary connection to the internet, you can also leave the Wi-Fi connection configured to use as a fallback, right? So, but this alert triggers when no Ethernet connectivity to the internet is available. That can be the case on some devices that might be all-in-one touch boards, right, where they are on carts and they move around, and they might only have Wi-Fi as an option to that, and we still could trigger based on that because that's the desired scenario, and they will never be wired up. This would be a case where you would want to silence the signal if that is the desired configuration for that type of device. And that would be the solution for that. Matt, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you hit it on the head. There was a question in the chat at one point about, hey, can we have two different signals, one for wired and one for Wi-Fi? Every device should be on a wired connection unless it happens to be on Wi-Fi. So I'm not sure there's much need for a wired signal there. This is really to alert you that, hey, a device has fallen back to Wi-Fi, at which point then you could take action on it for one reason or another.
Right. And again, right, if that's the majority of your estate is in this scenario, or it's a desired configuration, you can silence the whole signal across the board. Again, at the tenant level if you wanted to, or at the individual room level. All right, we've got 10 minutes left. All right, so we went through the dashboard, we went through signals and stuff too, and the categories and the incident states, and we went through some of the signals. So if there's any, from a webinar standpoint, folks that want to focus on a specific signal, I think we can have that conversation.
Yeah, if someone has a specific signal they want us to talk about, we'll let them put it in the chat. And we can talk about any that we didn't address. Kim and I threw the ones that we thought were most important and most frequently asked about in the chat. I'm not going to comment on roadmap items, so no, tonight.
Right. No roadmap.
Next. No roadmap items. So anything that doesn't exist within the Pro Management Portal today is not something that we'll talk about from a signals perspective on this call. Right. But yeah, and if no one has any other signals, we can just end a couple minutes early. That's totally okay too. There's one here, meeting app signal when the room appears to be working. So if folks are seeing an alert on the meeting app and a signal alert for the meeting app, but everything is working, what should they do?
Oh, on them. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, we would want you to take the agent logs and stuff on that, and then open up a support case for that, because when the app alert happens, we really are seeing that the meeting app itself is unhealthy for whatever reason, and if the app is still working correctly, then the signal isn't getting reset, and we would want to understand why. So that would be a case of wanting to do the agent test tool, and then opening up a support case for that, because that one is a very specific. In the logs itself, there is a report back that the app does give us a signal whether it's healthy or not. So that we would expect it to have turned back healthy if it's actually working. So we would want to investigate that. What other one do you got? Anybody else?
Next one, Teams rooms on Android, console pairing issues and console pairing health signal. What's that one mean?
That it does have there is two signals that we do take into consideration, right, from a pairing standpoint. What does it? Yeah, there's different ways of the pairing and stuff coming in of the signal when you have connected the two devices together. We do see that they have their connection together, and then when one of them doesn't return the signal back again, is when we trigger the unpairing option. So, that one should work correctly. If you're seeing that you're having, if they truly are unpaired for whatever reason, and or that you're seeing them, they're still paired and they're working correctly, and then one of them is still displaying as unpaired, typically they do need to just be restarted and then they can pair back again. But that should be a learn document as part of that as well. So I didn't probably answer that great, but there is a learn on it. And we've had some pairing issues, so that's probably contributed to that too. What else we got?
No, I think that's probably a fair. There's some roadmap questions and things like that that I'm ignoring in the chat, but otherwise, I think we can. I think we call it good as it stands here today.
All right. So if you've got other questions on signals, please take a look at the Learn documentations and the troubleshooting guides. It's a great place to take a look and get educated on what we're seeing for those signals and why we see those signals. So start there first, and please look at your tickets, look at the history. And double check that there. Okay. Thank you always for supporting us, for coming in and listening to this webinar. We always appreciate, your participation. We really value your feedback. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks everybody for joining. Cheers.
See you soon.